Hi, folks. Um, I'm making some more progress a little bit at a time with what I need to do with my house. And I thought it might be helpful to somebody at some point to see how I've organized that. I wasn't planning on organizing it, but this has ended up being really useful. And in my prior life, um, when I organize things for other people, in work, this is, as a project manager and so forth, this is something that I have a lot of training in and kind of natural talent in. So I just thought I might share it. Um, and if anybody sees this and thinks, the file would be helpful, I don't mind sharing it. Um, so what I'm going to do here is just share my screen and I'll walk you through it a little bit. And if you are feeling nerdy, you might enjoy it. And if not, this may not be the video for you. So here we go. Um, First, what's important to note when you're looking at somebody else's way of organizing something is that there's nothing magical about it. If it doesn't work for you, take out what doesn't work for you, or let it just remind you, oh, I hate doing something this way, but it makes me think of this other way I'd rather do it. And either way, that's valuable. I tend to, a lot of times, if I'm looking for something to organize, something, I'll just kind of Google, different examples of how people have done something, and it'll make me think, oh, I could do this better. What would work for me is XYZ. But what I also find, so it's an iterative process. What I also find is that, if you're looking at the column types, oh, well, this might remind me of three things I wouldn't have thought of myself. But also the way that this person did it may remind me of ways that they didn't do it right, or they didn't do it completely. And so it helps two ways. It helps me be more creative, and then it helps me to fill in gaps where I might have missed something that I do want to track. So these build over time, is the other thing to remember whenever you're starting a new kind of tracking device. For that sounds very very weird at such a time as AI is taking over everything. Um uh but you want to just know, like, just because this has turned into a whole lot of what we've got, like 22 or something, 20 um, columns here, doesn't mean that you have to have 20 columns. And it might be that you take these 20 columns and you hide several of them. So if you've never hidden a column before, I know most of us have, but not everybody. So I'm just going to show you. I've just clicked on this. You just left click it, or touch your touchpad with it, and then you're going to right click. And I'm not in Microsoft right now because I don't have a paid service to that right now. So I'm just using LibreOffice, which is better than Microsoft in some ways and not as good in other ways. So this will look a little bit different for you if you're doing it in Word, but the process is still the same. The left right click is still the same. And what I would do here is just hide the column. And if I want it back, I'm just going to go over wherever that is hiding, and I'm going to show the column again. Um, so here's what I've done. Um, you always kind of start with it, you start with this, and then you end up adding some of these over time. But just start with your item. What's your item that you want to check on? I've reorganized these from time to time, but most of what this does for me is, as a person who has to do things very, very small amounts at a time, but wants to, have that feeling of like, oh, I did do something today, or I have accomplished something, so that you don't get discouraged and think, oh, well, I tried to do these six things, they all failed, so now I have to start completely over tomorrow. Rather than do that, which feels really cruddy, and which has negative impacts on the brain chemistry. You really want you actually get a dopamine release from the brain when you can like check things off of a list. So I'm not suggesting that you just like make random lists of stuff that's not valid, but remember that every little effort does get you closer to your goal, even if it requires some rework. And this is something I really had to relearn as a disabled person, because coming from the efficiency management and process management world, I'm always looking for, in my past life, I was always looking for and very good at identifying um, the quickest way that would be most efficient and that would, have the longest term benefit for getting something done. But now my life is very different. At this point, like removing tape from caulking is a step. Okay, it's something I need to remember. So this helps my cognitive impairment to remember that's a step you need to do. And actually, this is in the wrong order, because for caulking you need to take the tape off right after you you put the caulk on. Thankfully, I did do it right, but I didn't list it right. Um, uh, so yeah, it's in sort of wonky order. Not all of these are in the right order, but the bottom line is that you want to make sure that you're valuing each step that you do. And as I get something done, you may be able to see this, you may not be. I've made it gray for myself, but it may be a little bit hard to see. I'll make this temporarily black so you can see it a little better. Um, so I had to cut down a tree. It's a small tree, but it's still a tree. I had to learn how to use a chainsaw to do that. You can see here, I said I needed to buy a chainsaw, and that validates like all your effort. You're looking online, checking reviews, all that bullshit that you have to do now for everything. Um, I've also listed it over here as, is this done or not? And in this case, you don't have to call this, is it done? You can say status. You can, say whatever works for you. For me, it helped me to have that word attached to it. Is this done? Um, and so for the things that are done, I put them down at the bottom of the list. So what I would do if this was done is I would pull it off the top and I would put it at the bottom. And then I would add up how many this is. Let's say that's about 20. I mean, I would add it up properly, but I would do that. And then this number changes to 94. That tells me I've done 94 things, which is a really fucking big deal, right? Like that's a really big deal. I'm just going to reverse this because that's not done yet. And you see that that number goes back down to 74. And this goes back up to the top. So, but what I do as I'm getting things done in a category on a line item, I had these initially in all separate line items, but it was just getting too weird and difficult. Is once they get done, I just gray them out, so I'm not looking at them. And what I've decided to do recently is, because this is the to-do part of the list, these are my steps that I pay attention to day, is I'll make something red. I'll put it in red. Obviously, if you have different vision on colors, do whatever you want. In LibreOffice, a lot of the colors that you can make text they're not very bright. Like you can't really see them very well. And the point is for this to kind of grab your eye. So you know what you're working on day to day. But this, for example, I already recaulked the bathroom, and I had the bathroom and the kitchen in the same line item initially, but since the bathroom is now done, but the kitchen is not, and the kitchen, I've got to clean the dishes and get the counter all clean so that I can then clean off um the caulking area so that I can recaulk it. Those are kind of different processes, and I wanted to validate. And I mean, it was a big deal. It's the first time I've ever caulked anything, and I did a really nice job as it turned out. And so I'm pretty amazed. And but I thought, you know what, you want to validate that achievement. And so what I did was I separated it, and now it sits down at the bottom, and there were 8 steps to recaulking that bathroom. And I'm not really done with it yet because I need to do the bottom where the tub meets the floor. Um, but it's got a little different setup down there than it did in the other area. The other area was just grout. So I'm actually looking all over the place for my putty knife because I have one, but for some reason it's disappeared now that I need it. Um, so so this is just that part. So you can see the coloring. I also have right at the top, I have returns. Like, what do I need to return? Okay. So this, I already returned a push cart to True Value. I bought it for a handyman and then he didn't show up. And so I took it back. So I'm going to gray that out and then I would put that at the bottom right here, or I might just take it off. Um, I'll show you what I connect these to in a second. Because you see I have an area that has dollars for parts. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you. Dollars for parts and dollars for labor. I anticipated my labor costs would be highest, but now that I really don't have anybody to help me, that has changed. And so this is the amount that I spent on one day for a person to help me, and then he just didn't show up the next day. So on top of him holding my cooler hostage that I let him borrow, and we'll never see again now. Um, uh, so now I have to figure out how to transport medical things that have to be cooled. Um, but this is how much, I spent on that. So that goes here. And even though this isn't labeled, again, this points out like this is your document, right? So I know that the number of the dollars in parts that I spend or, materials um, is going to sum up this whole column. It's going to end up here. This is my total for right now. And then the labor is going to sum up this whole column and it's going to go like that. And if you look up here, again, most people are familiar at this point who are watching this with how spreadsheets work. But if you're not, this is what that formula looks like. If you need to make it, you can type this in, or sometimes your system will help you kind of auto create it. But you can say equal sum, and then you put the parentheses in, and then you put what's called your cell location, which in this case is S3. You see this S here and this 3 here. That's your location. And then it goes all the way down to wherever you take it all the way down to. Currently, mine is dragged down to S128. And the same thing here. And what I actually did here was I just grabbed this and you left click and then pull it over with your touchpad. So that's how you do that. But now that I've made this bigger, I'm sorry, that was maybe too small for you to look at helpfully. So this is your item. This is like, what am I doing? What's my main description of what I'm doing? Recaulking the kitchen counter, for example. What's the quantity of things I had to do? So I had to install 2 locks on a file cabinet earlier. And so I put 2 there. What, have I bought it yet? And then I would put yes. Okay, if I had something to buy there. So if I had to buy caulk for this still, I have caulk now, but if I had to buy caulk, how many things of caulk do I need to buy? 1, for example. Did I buy them? Yes. Did I try the process? Yes, I tried it. Did I install? In this case, it's not an install, but if it was the locks, for example, yes, I installed it. These steps are especially useful and validating for you if you're having to come back and forth to it. And although the reason that I'm doing this in such a detailed way is because of my disabilities, this would be very useful if if you're still working and you have to come back and forth to these projects and have 80 other things going on in between. And just need to know, well, where am I on this now that I've, fed the kids and, gone to do all my errands and all the things. So sorry, these keep glaring, but so that's why those are there. And then, and in fact, I'll go down to some of the things that are actually done so you can see how this is set up. So this one, for example, um, you can see at first this was my leftmost column. And this was if if a helper is coming, if I have a handyman or something, what's the priority level? Where do I want them to prioritize? So I said we need to fix the small toilet first. The toilet works, but the stopper in it was the wrong size, and so it didn't flush readily. It's not a bathroom that gets used, but still needs to be fixed. Um, so that's a high priority, easy win, right? If I have somebody else do it. Is it inside or outside? It's inside. And I just wanted my helpers to know, like, this is stuff you could do when I'm not here, or this is stuff that you can't do in the rain or whatever. Um, so we fixed the small toilet. There's just one of them. Did we try to do it? Yes, we tried to do it. I replaced the stopper. I put the new chain on the toilet, put the new handle on the toilet, done. But in its earlier iterations, I did add some steps in there because it was like, well, did you buy the things? Well, yes, I bought the things. I actually bought several things for this at several stores, and over time I got the right one, but it took several trips. Now you can see that I do have more, wait, what's the caulking? Oh yeah, that's right. But you see, I did many more steps here. Um, Not because this one was not a bunch of bullshit to figure out, because it was, but just because over time I realized, oh, you really want to validate those extra steps because they take time, and if you go to the store for one thing, you may have to wait another week before you go to the store the next time. So this is my scheduled date. If you're doing classical project management, you frequently will have two columns for dates. You'll have like a scheduled date and then an actual start date and then actually an actual end date. And actually I just said you have two columns. You actually have four columns usually. You have a scheduled start and end date, and then you have an actual start and end date. I didn't want to feel like I was at work because that's traumatic memory for me at this point and difficult for me. And so I did it this way. And I'll show you a little more what I did to it later. And then you can just put in your coding of, is this going to be done by us? You can, or you can put somebody's code in there. I think I had H in here for helper. Initially I had somebody's name in here, but after they, kind of screwed me over as as helpers seem to do a lot of the time, you may not want their their names in there after a while. So this becomes my real go-to document and real like it's a positive document, so I want to make sure that what's on here feels positive to me. Now you see up here, this is a code. This is not just something I wrote in. Initially, I just wrote in the cost of things. But what this actually is the location of these figures. Okay, so if I zoom out of this just a little bit, this says what area it's for. Um, this is the item that I bought. This is what did I buy it for? I bought it for these things. Where do I need to buy it, or where did I buy it? From these places. Um, this is an example for, oh, like this is what I have in mind to buy for this, but I already have something at home that I want to try first for that. If it works, then this gets changed to done rather than NS for not started. And and then this price stays at zero. But if I have to buy something else for it, then that price gets put in there. And what happens is over time, again, I didn't plan on making something this detailed, but it's ended up really useful because what happens is then I connect this to all I do for if you've never done this before, I'm just going to, for example, I'm going to click into here. I'm going to say equals, and then I'm going to go over here, and then I'm just going to I'll click on the 30, not the 0, so you can see what happens. And then I just press enter. Again, that's old hat to you if you're familiar with Excel, but if you're not, there you go. So, and it just populates in there. And if you want to say that plus another thing, you just say plus, and then you go back over here and do that. And I can say plus and that and plus and that. And then I press my equals, and then I have the addition done for me. Um, so that can be very helpful. Um, and you see how that 240 changed to 295 because of that column that it's in. And it changes right back for you. So that can be very, very helpful. Now this right here, just to give you an example, is, when you have very specific measurements you have to adhere to, you want to go ahead and put those in here, and then you don't forget them. I take this to the store with me. Um, I have it on a laptop, but you can certainly do it on a phone. You could do it in a Google Doc if you wanted to. Um, so And then you'll notice that once something is done, and I pull it down to the bottom of the list here, as I showed you a little bit earlier, I've changed the date on it. So whenever it was done, and because I'm only using one column for dates, um, I have found that for me, it is most validating and it feels best to say, okay, well, I'm not going to say yesterday anymore. I'm going to change this to tomorrow. So today I did not work on the house at all. Um, Although I did identify some people to help me, which was exciting. So I have somebody who's going to come do one thing that I really can't do, that I've already injured myself trying to do. And so, like for tomorrow, so I did work on this yesterday, but since I want to be looking forward to tomorrow, I'm going to change the date on there. And WIP is sort of a project management term for work in process or work in progress. But you can use whatever code works for you, because the LibreOffice spreadsheet format doesn't sort quite as well as Microsoft Excel does. I've done my coding in a way that will help it to sort the way that I want it to. So that's just using kind of the right initials that'll end up in the order that I want. But you do you. Um, so as I said, the other thing is you want to just be aware of things you need to return, especially big ticket items, but those little ticket items like add up real fast. So you can see I've already spent $1,000, and remember this number over here. So that's, in this month I've spent $1,000. Um, the other thing I would say is, so I mentioned this is the priority. You see there's a lot of gaps in that at this point because I'm doing everything myself now. But this was my original prioritization for people who would help me. I didn't give them this list. This would be too detailed for anybody who would be helping me, but I would do like a Word document version of it for them that would be like, this is first, this is second, etc. But I've grayed that out because I don't have help now. And so this isn't really that relevant. And but for myself, this reminds me, oh, is this still first priority, or have I switched these around because of different factors or because of my health and what I can do right now, etc. And then this was, when I was figuring out, okay, well, people aren't going to show up, so I have to figure out what can I really do myself over time. I have, and this is part of grants preparation. So if I have, kind of um, through mid-year to get this done before the low season starts and it's affordable for me to go over there, then what can I really do myself? So this is just a Y for yes. And let's see, can I install window privacy film? I probably will at this point. I'll learn how to do that. And you'll see in a few of these, it will say learn. So on the doors, I had to figure out how to do my pantry door frame myself. Um, and so that told me you need to learn how to do that. If it's something that I don't need to do myself, that was not applicable here because someone did that for me on the day that they did show up. And then this one is an example of like, oh, I don't think I can do this myself. I need some help some kind of way on this. So that's what I did there. And then this one I think is the only piece I have not explained to you. This I referred to it a little bit earlier, but for example, when this all gets done, if this stays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then I'll put a 7 on here, and then it will add up. And over time, and it shows me every day, even though I didn't do a lot today, I did have some key things that happened. Excuse me, I gotta sneeze. That were really big deals to get done, despite a plumbing company wanting $350 to like turn a spigot outside in my yard, which was fucking ridiculous. But then someone was such a blessing and came and did it for me after I've been really struggling with figuring out how to do it for quite a while. And even though I have asked around for somebody to come and do it for money for me, but then someone did it for free and he is an expert and knows how to do it. So I was very fortunate there. So that was something that I really wanted to honor. I wanted to honor his effort, even though he's not looking at this and I am, etc. So these are just each of these little things are ways that there's so many things you could do this with. And I know when I was working and could never get anything done in my house, um, or just because you have to do so much rework these days because you call centers and nobody can help you and whatever. This kind of list, I feel like this list is going to help me for more things than this once this is even done. But this also tells you like I am working on this. I am actually getting stuff done. And if you look how far down this list goes, I mean, the stuff I don't have done yet is about 30 deep, right? But there's all these steps to it. Each thickness of a line item tells you how much work is really involved. And and then we get to, oh, wait, I've actually gotten a lot done. Okay, so from 36 to 56 are all stuff I have done, and it constitutes 74 things, 74 steps. So I really honor that effort. That's something that I haven't really done before in this way. And I have a lot of shame that shows up if I feel like I'm not, you know, if I'm making an effort and then it's not leading to getting something done for some reason, that has like a shame impact in my mental health, and nobody taught me that. It's just a thing I have. So this is really helping with that. So I hope some of that is helpful. If you're disabled or if you're not disabled, and if you are preparing to relocate in any kind of way, but certainly if you're preparing to do any scouting trips or long-term travel or kind of slow travel or relocation, I hope this will be helpful. I see a lot of people kind of running around like, chickens with heads cut off, and really stressing about their relocation process. And to me, I don't see a reason to stress about it exactly. Many of us understand the reality of staying in the United States, but even if you're not in the United States, every country has, stuff. And so I hope that this can be of some help um, as you're going through your process and can make it a more joyful process. For me, it has made it a much more joyful process, and where I feel like I'm making progress every day or every week. So that's all. If you would like this resource, feel free to ask, and I don't mind sharing that with you. I'll need you to, give me a way to send it to you. So you'll need to provide that, but hopefully, and in fact, I can add it actually. I can add a link to it and just post it in a Google Doc or something if it's helpful to someone. So that's all for now.